Hello and welcome to your next flipped lecture. Today we're talking about freedom of speech, your First Amendment right to express yourself. Specifically, we will be looking at your freedom of speech as it applies to you, a student in school. Okay, so there's multiple cases involving students suing their school over freedom of expression, speech, every year. However, the court decisions vary. They're different. So here's a very important idea. They're different depending on the circumstances, the reality in the school district. No school district is the same, and so it will change from school district to school district. It depends on the circumstances. Additionally, it's different depending on which court hears the case. As you're about to learn, not all courts are the same. Some are more conservative, more traditional, some are more liberal or more free. So it depends on which court hears this case as well. So if we take a look at this map, you'll notice that there are 11 U.S. district courts. We divide our country into these different court systems. These are federal courts so that they can be more efficiently administered. As you'll notice, we are in District 7, which is Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. The court decisions can vary from district to district. Some districts are more conservative, traditional, restrictive, whereas some are more liberal. They want to give more rights. So the 7th Circuit is what they're called. Our circuit tends to be more conservative, this one right here. Students and teachers have fewer rights. That's very important. So here is a very important court case. We don't expect you to know a lot of court cases in this class, but this is definitely one that you will need to know. It's called Tinker v. Des Moines. Whenever you see a V in between two names, it means it's a court case. It means Tinker versus Des Moines. And so Tinker was a student versus the school district versus Des Moines. And this is considered the grandfather of student speech cases. And the result of this case was that student speech must present a material or substantial disruption to limit. Here you see a picture. There were these students in Des Moines that were protesting against the Vietnam War, and they wanted to wear these black armbands with peace signs on it as a visible sign of protest. The schools were upset about this and suspended them. They sued, and the courts agreed with the school district that student speech can be limited if it presents a material or substantial disruption. And so what we find out is that student speech is protected, but there are some parts of it that aren't. Schools can prohibit or limit vulgar, lewd, or offensive speech. They can do it at school-sponsored activities, so at pep rallies or sporting events, your speech can be limited. And school can limit speech promoting drug use. So you can't just promote drug use with your speech. So if it's lewd, if it is at a school event, if it promotes drug use, or if it presents any kind of material or substantial disruption, it can be limited. And so, to restrict student dress, which is part of your freedom to express yourself, freedom of speech, a school must prove that it has the potential for a substantial disruption. Meaning, if you're going to walk down the school with something on your shirt that the administration thinks is going to cause, a fight or some kind of disruption in the classroom, they can limit what you wear and say, take that off or go home, and you're suspended. But what does that mean? Who determines what could be disruptive? What really is a disruption? Can a school tell a student what not to wear because there might be a disruption, or do they have to wait till a disruption actually occurs? We're about to see this through many examples. So here's an example. Here you see a t-shirt, has George W. Bush's face on it, and says International Terrorist. This is in Dearborn, Michigan, and the student wore it at a school that has a majority of Iraqi Americans at it. And this was during the Iraq War, And this student wore the shirt because he didn't like the Iraq War. However, the reason why there were so many Iraqi Americans in this one community was that during the first Gulf War, so many of their people in Iraq fled. They didn't like Bush. They left, and so they actually, they didn't like Saddam Hussein, and so when they left, they really supported America, and so they didn't appreciate this shirt. The Iraqi American students were supportive of Bush because he dealt with Saddam. And so the student chose to go home rather than take off the shirt because they thought that this was going to cause a disruption. However, the student won the case. The court found that the school failed to show that the shirt had caused a substantial disruption or material interference with school activities. Nothing had happened. They were just afraid it was going to happen. Next one we got is an example from Franklin, Pennsylvania. And here it says that you see a shirt. It says Franklin Regional Football 07 with a picture of a train. It says, "We run train." And the student created the shirt and sold it for $10 a piece at school. Not part of an athletic program or football team sponsored. And the school banned the t-shirt because its slogan is a slang reference to a sex act. They realized that it was lewd. In this case, the school succeeded. Here's another one. This man would go into a mall and wear this shirt that says 4,000 troops, 1 million Iraqis dead. And on the shirt there would be blood splotches, what was made to look like it. The mall security asked him to remove his shirt because it bothered or intimidated some of the shoppers. This old man refused, and security removed him in his wheelchair, and he was charged with trespassing. Did he try to fight this? Did he win? No, because remember, the First Amendment rights do not protect you in private facilities. You do not have the right to express yourself on someone else's property. That mall belonged to someone. They have the right to ask you to leave if they so choose. And they did, and they were completely within their rights. Here you see a Sesame Street parody, make fun, and here you see guns and weapons and drugs. And here this can't be worn in a school because it's showing weapons and other kind of inappropriate behavior. Here's one that comes right out of Edgerton High School back in 2007. It says Insane Clown Posse, a music group. And the school argued that these t-shirts promoted misogyny, racism, and gang violence. Misogyny meaning hatred or mistrust towards women. 30 students protested outside the school. However, the school was in the right. They felt that this would cause a disruption and that it was inappropriate. That's what happened. Here we have a cancer fundraiser t-shirt. Two girls, one mother died of cancer, the other's mother had chemo, and as you see it says "Save Second Base" with very interestingly placed baseballs. They wanted to raise $10,000 for breast cancer research. The school objected to the second base reference, saying it had an implied indecent meaning. They ended up just stopping selling them. Here you have a shirt with a Nazi symbol with a cancel sign around it. It was an anti-Nazi t-shirt. So what ended up happening was there was a conflict between two groups in this school. There were the gay students and the rednecks. The rednecks used the swastika as a symbol. Now the students wore anti-Nazi shirt to protest the redneck group. However, the school feared the shirt would become a disturbance between the two groups. The school won the case because the court determined it was reasonable to believe the shirt would cause a disturbance between these two groups. It was going to cause a fight. Now, the school circumstances can determine the outcome of the case. That, depending on what's the reality of that school, that might mean that there's a better chance to say that if something's going to happen, we can stop it. Once again, it all depends on what's happening in that school. Here you see a kid with his NRA sports camp shirt. He won it at a sports camp put on by the National Rifle Association. School argued that the shirt contained weapons. However, the school had no policy against weapons on the clothing. They asked him to take off the shirt or go home. He said he'd go home, and he got suspended. He sued the school, and the NRA, the National Rifle Association, paid for the case, and the student won because the school had no policy against weapons on clothing. Here you have the Confederate flag, which has long been a symbol of the Confederate South and cause of controversy. There have been about 24 different cases. They've been decided both ways. Students attempt to argue it as a part of their heritage. It's part of their tradition. The court has not really bought that argument. Another case of saying, not only am I perfect, I'm a redneck too. They try to limit his ability to wear that. The student won that case. Another case of a weapon on a shirt. The student argued that it was a patriotic display. The student won that case, in this instance, because the court found that banning the shirt wasn't reasonably related to the school's legitimate pedagogical, its teaching concern of controlling violence. Here you see a t-shirt making fun of George W. Bush. You see him with a drink in his hand with cocaine right there. And the school argued it contained drug and alcohol references when they asked the student to take it off. However, the student argued that free speech and had caused no disturbance because he had worn the shirt multiple times before and was never told before not to wear it. The student won because previously it had not been disruptive. Here's another example of how prior situations, circumstances, made so that it was not a problem. That, it hadn't caused a problem before, so it couldn't be considered a disruption. You might remember Michael Vick, who got in trouble for dogfighting. Here you see at Texas Tech. They had banned the sale of this t-shirt, bearing the likeness of Michael Vick hanging the dog mascot of the rival Texas A&M. A fraternity had been selling these outside at the parking lot. They said they were originally going to give 50% of the proceeds to an animal defense league because we knew there would be controversy about the shirts, animal rights, stuff like that. This was in poor taste. In this case, they ended up just getting rid of the shirts. They stopped selling them. Here's a very important one. This is the Jenna 6. The Jenna 6 case was 6 African American students were beat up on one white student, and they were charged with second-degree murder. And because the student had died, second-degree attempted murder, and the community was outraged because that was such a harsh offense for what happened, whereas only a few weeks previously, a bunch of white students had done something to a black student, and they were given, battery or very much more limited charges. And so these shirts were worn by a bunch of students who were upset with them. The principal told the students to turn their shirts out. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, came through and defended these students, and the students won this case because the shirt is clearly political speech. Political speech is your most protected form of speech. Something very important to remember. And here are just some more examples of how, if they think it could cause a disruption, homosexuality is a sin, Islam is a lie, abortion is murder, this might cause a disruption in certain schools based on the circumstances. Day of silence, be happy, not gay, that caused a disruption to the school environment, as does this next shirt. So remember, it depends on the circumstances and the school district. Thank you and have a great day.